All right, moving on to the next section, which is the permanence. This is really the core of carbon crediting and the offset to make sure that when we do credit and offset some of these emissions, that they actually stay abated. This is something that the nature-based credits often struggle with, and I think this is where the real edge that engineered solutions have, whether it be CO2 sequestration, direct air capture, biochar, or specifically leaving unburned oil and gas resources in the ground, especially the ones that are marginally beneficial to produce. So there's a large section of the protocol focusing on how to document this. Basically, we have decided to focus to kind of put forward the principles of what is to be established in terms of the geologic permanence, but because of the variability of each operation, we largely leave it up to the operator within the parameters of our guidance to establish the best case for their permanence of their retired project. And so this will be in the form of a permanence report that'll be uploaded to the platform and will be verified by the third-party verifier, in this case, Ryder Scott, and to basically establish that when the wells contained within this project are retired, that contains the entire reservoir or the body in communication, the subsurface. So some of the supporting documentation, obviously there would have to be maps, project area wellbore inventory, cross sections to define the subsurface area, wellbore schematics to kind of show the perforations and the completed zones. And then also to kind of establish the fluid dynamics in the subsurface, history matching, and dynamic data such as pressure transient analysis, rate transient analysis, reservoir modeling, whatever it might be. So that is something that either Ryder Scott can help with generating, or with a lot of operators already have such information or analysis in place, just as prudent operators and understanding the reserves they have. Also, a lot of this documentation is based around Class 6 regulatory permits for CCS injection wells, because we're aiming for the similar requirements, basically establishing the permanence of the fluid sequestered and remaining underground. Obviously, in this case, if you just retire the reserves, it's a static reservoir. And so it's much easier to prove up that permanence and make sure that when we do abandon these wells, then those reserves stay where they are. That is a fairly easy case to make, but we want to make sure that it is documented and clear and accessible so that in the future where potential buyers or auditors want to check the credibility of the issued credits, they can log back into the IP interplanetary file system, look which well their credits came from, and look at the justification validation of the permanence and that those things are really still there and that their credit is valid even in the long term. The next element of the permanence is the operational permanence. So obviously the initial execution of the project by plugging and abandoning these wells is a big part of it. Retiring those well bores, plugging it according to local regulatory standards, cleaning up the well site, reclaiming the land, that is all part of that process. And we leave it up to it's basically up to the operator, the project owner, to monitor that there's no additional operations while they're performing their land reclamation duties according to the regulation. And this basically means that there's no new permits filed for drilling or developing the reserves that have been claimed for credits. In the future, in the next year and phase of the platform, we'll automate this process so that it'll be automatically referencing the online databases of the local regulators to check for new permit issuance within project boundaries. That way, if there is somebody looking to file a permit that may impede on the project, it is flagged and referenced. And this way we'll be able to monitor it because that's information that is already automatically publicly available and uploaded. So that is easy to track. The final component and the third leg of our permanence guarantee is the legal protections, which can be done either through a declaration of restrictive covenants, which is a contract for the mineral owners to basically sign and forego their right to extract and develop the retired reserves for a minimum of 50 years going forward. And so this is something that can be signed and tied to the mineral ownership contract by either the operator if they own the mineral rights, or if it's a private mineral owner, they can assign it as well. And this is why it's so important for us to create high quality carbon credits and come up with break-even values. And when we do our break-even calculations for the operator, we factor in their working interest as well as royalty interest. So that takes into account a compensation for the mineral owners in proportion to their ownership stake in the mineral resources. So even though they're foregoing that future extraction, they're still compensated for what they would have received through the value of the carbon credits. But we leave those negotiations largely up to the operator, but we're happy to guide those negotiations and discussions as well. The final and kind of catch-all safety net for this is a small buffer account. When we designed our buffer account, we decided to allocate 1% of all generated credits into a universal buffer account. And this is to address any unforeseen reversals that would occur in the future. Looking at kind of the technical capabilities of the projects and the general protocol itself, we think the risk is quite low. And we did this by looking at kind of current documentation out there for the standards for buffer accounts, either from the CCS, the California Air Resource Board, and other standards that are existing in the industry.